Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching Darker Things. As someone who's taken deep dives into history's most disturbing events, personalities, true crime, conspiracy theories, and urban legends, I still like to think of myself as someone who induced with a level of objectivity. In my most recent video on the West Memphis Three, I made some assertions due to DNA evidence, claims by Terry Hoff's former wife and in-laws, that he was more than likely the real murderer, the actual West Memphis boogeyman. While I do not fully believe that he is innocent, I am also not fully convinced of his guilt. In fact, I'm now forced to re-examine the facts and pour over the case again and take another look at the guilt or innocence of Jesse Misskelley Jr., Jason Baldwin, David Eccles. How much of what was presented in the Paradise Lost films, the movie The Devil's Knot, and subsequent books is sensationalism? We're going to re-examine that now through another lens of objectivity. So prepare yourself for another deep dive to the West Memphis Three. Okay, let's delve into a summary of these events. On the evening of May 5th, 1993, in West Memphis, Arkansas, three 8-year-old boys, Michael Moore, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, went missing while riding their bicycles on North 14th Street towards Goodwin around 6 p.m. Around 8 p.m., John Mark Byers reported the disappearance of his son Christopher to the West Memphis Police Department. An officer arrived 10 minutes later to interview Byers, who by 8:30 p.m. began searching the wooded area of Robin Hood Hills where his son sometimes played. Around 9 p.m., the mothers of Michael Moore and Stevie Branch, Dana Moore and Pamela Hobbs, called to report their sons missing. The following day at 6 a.m., Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell announced the boys' disappearance and took charge of the efforts. By 1:45 p.m., the three boys were found dead, naked, hogtied, and mutilated in a ditch in Robin Hood Hills. The crime scene had been tampered with, removing crucial evidence. Almost a month later, on June 3rd, 1993, Jesse Misskelley, 17, confessed to involvement in the murders, leading to the arrest of David Eccles, who was 8, and Jason Baldwin, who was 16. The police suspected occult involvement, primarily led by Damian Eccles. The trio, known as the West Memphis Three, faced capital murder charges. In 1994, Misskelley was convicted of 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. Eccles was sentenced to death, and Baldwin to life in prison. The case gained widespread attention, with advocates claiming the three were wrongly convicted. Documentaries, books, and legal support ensued. In 2011, the West Memphis Three accepted an offer plea, maintaining innocence while acknowledging evidence could lead to conviction. They were released with time served. Now, despite the public perception, the three remained convicted murderers. The case relied on circumstantial evidence, and this series will delve into why they were found guilty. It emphasizes that justice should focus on the real victims, Michael Moore, Stevie Branch, and Christopher Byers, who deserve remembrance and justice. If you're interested in exploring this further, subscribe to stay updated. While acknowledging law enforcement's imperfections, this series contends that the evidence against the West Memphis Three is still substantial, and the focus remains on the tragedy of the young victims robbed of justice by the convicted killer. I just wanted to take pause for a moment and thank everybody who's watched previous episodes and subscribed. I'm not monetized, but I do hope to get there someday. As a small channel, it's extremely unlikely that the YouTube algorithm is going to pick up my content, but I do appreciate everyone who shares my episodes. So if you're new and you like what you hear, please like and subscribe and continue to share. Now, having established that, let's proceed. Let's flash forward to June 3rd, 1993. Jesse Misskelley Jr. was summoned to the West Memphis Police Station at 10 a.m. for interrogation. While Jesse was acquainted with Damian Eccles, the suspect in the murders of Stevie, Christopher, and Michael, the police were interviewing individuals associated with Eccles to gather information. But Jesse was not the first of any interview, nor was he regarded as a suspect at the moment. Now, before delving into those details, let's clarify a misconception prevalent in the West Memphis Three advocate community. There's a belief that Jesse underwent a lack of due process and was not informed of his Miranda rights. An instance is cited involving Henry Rollins, a musician and actor, who conveyed in a 2003 radio interview, and I quote, "What struck me was the absence of due process that the three imprisoned boys experienced, and the failure to read Miranda rights to Jesse Misskelley. And I thought, wow, that's not how Americans should be treated." No. Inaccuracies of this nature are frequently circulated within the West Memphis Three community, and it can be quite frustrating. Before delving into Jesse's interview and interrogation, let's review some facts affirming that Jesse's rights were not infringed upon, and the West Memphis Police Department adhered strictly to procedural guidelines. Firstly, Jesse's father, Jesse Misskelley Jr., engaged in discussions with Sergeant Mike Allen at 9:45 a.m. and later at 11:15 a.m. regarding the interview. Allen initiated the conversation with Jesse Sr. earlier in the morning. Subsequently, Jesse Sr. departed, fetched Jesse, and at 11:15 a.m. both Allen and Jesse Jr. headed to the police station. Jesse Sr. consented by signing a waiver permitting the police to administer a polygraph exam to Jesse Jr. Secondly, the West Memphis Police did indeed appraise Jesse of his rights. Sergeant Allen conveyed Misskelley's legal rights at approximately 11 a.m., and Misskelley acknowledged by initiating and signing a rights form. Furthermore, Detective Durham reiterated Misskelley's rights at 11:30 a.m. before proceeding with a polygraph exam, and once again Misskelley acknowledged by initiating and signing a rights form. Now the second form, although not accessible online, was discussed and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 11 during a court hearing on January 13, 1994. At the onset of the initial taped confession, the police once again reminded Misskelley of his legal rights. He reviewed and signed the rights form. Moving on to point 3. Jesse Jr. did not comprehend his legal rights, but he did comprehend them. Having faced legal issues previously, he was no stranger to the police department. His lawyers attempted to argue that he was incapable of understanding these rights, seeking to invalidate his June 3, 1993 confession. Now, prosecutors countered by citing Jesse's extensive experience with law enforcement before the date, having signed legal rights waivers on 4 prior occasions. With these factual clarifications, let's delve into the notes by detectives Mike Allen and Brian Ridge. Jesse claimed he worked as a roofer on the day of the murders, followed by staying home for the night. Notably, he later contradicted himself, asserting he was out of town wrestling at an event. Now, this marked the beginning of several inconsistent alibis. Jesse implicated Damien Eccles and Robert Birch in the murders, providing details about their relationships and activities. However, suspicion mounted as inconsistencies arose, and Jesse agreed to a polygraph test. After the test, Bill Durham informed investigators that Jesse was deceptive. Detectives intensified their questioning, employing a disturbing photo and a tape recording involving a young boy, Aaron Hutchinson, who Jesse actually had babysat. Instead of expressing confusion or denial, Jesse, during the 2-hour interrogation, eventually confessed. Now, it's crucial to note that contrary to claims by filmmakers, Jesse's confession occurred over approximately 2 hours, not the 12 as suggested. Jesse's initial confession was vague and inaccurate on many details, raising questions later exploded by West Memphis Three supporters. However, it's essential to acknowledge that these initial discrepancies were not necessarily due to coercion. Jesse provided reasons for his lies, which will be explored later. Initial accuracies included the timing and the manner of the murders, the color of the rope used, and the alleged details of sexual assault. Most notably, Jesse's inconsistent statements included changing the time of the murders and ascribing a non-existent choking incident. Subsequent confessions, he amended details about the victims being tied with brown rope, which in reality was their own shoelaces. Jesse also claimed to have seen acts of rape and violence, but forensics evidence remained inconclusive. Despite these inconsistencies, Jesse's confession led to his arrest along with Damien and Jason for the murders of Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore. Jesse's trial took place separately, and after being found guilty, he was sentenced to life plus 40 years in prison. Following his conviction, a letter from Deputy John Moody to Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell detailed additional information from Jesse, providing a disturbing account of the events. Jesse reiterated this information on February 8th, February 17th of 1994 in subsequent interviews. While Jesse admitted to lying during the initial confession, attributing it to a lack, or rather a tactic, to mislead the police. He wanted to see if they really knew what they said they knew. His complex statements and varying confessions contribute to the intricate web surrounding the West Memphis Three case. Against his attorney's advice, Jesse chose to confess to the prosecuting attorneys without any pre-arranged deal. When questioned about this decision, Jesse stated, "I want something to be done about it." His confessions to his attorney, made willingly, were detailed and uncoerced. In total, Jesse confessed 6 times, on June 3rd, June the 11th, and August 19th of 1993, and February 4th, February 8th, and February 17th of 1994. These are the documented and recorded instances, with speculation of other potential added confessions which cannot be substantiated to date. Throughout these confessions, Jesse expressed remorse for his role in the murders of Stevie, Michael, and Christopher. He admitted to crying multiple times, overwhelmed by guilt. His statements found were corroborated in the accounts of his father's girlfriend at the time, Lee Rush. Now, after Jesse Misskelley was arrested, law enforcement obtained a search warrant for Jesse's trailer. Lee informed officers that she had heard Jesse crying loudly at night on several occasions. Recounting the incidents, Lee stated, "I knew that something was wrong. A few nights ago, little Jesse was in his room crying so loud and sobbing so hard that it woke me up. I went in and asked him what was wrong. His reply was that his girlfriend was moving to Florida. However, Jesse's girlfriend, Susie Brewer, did not actually move to Florida. It's a fabricated story." This lie, coupled with Jesse's emotional reactions, drew a connection between his distress and the recordings of Aaron. A tension between Lee Rush and Jesse Sr. became evident, with Jesse Sr. standing by his son, right or wrong, while Lee felt that if found guilty, she wanted nothing to do with Jesse Misskelley Jr., a sentiment she asserted that she would share even if it were her own son. The relationship between Jesse Jr. and Lee Rush concluded shortly after this period. Apart from Jesse Jr.'s numerous confessions, he lacked a credible alibi during the time frame of the murders. Notably, Jesse Jr.'s alibi underwent changes, possibly by his own account or, at times, narrated differently by his father, Jesse Sr. Shortly after his son's arrest, Jesse Sr. was interviewed by news reporters, including one from KAI-TV. When asked if his son could have been with Damien and Jason on the night of the murders, Jesse Sr. acknowledged the possibility, but asserted that his son was not involved in any killings. However, Jesse's father later contended that his son was at home, recalling seeing him at 7:15 p.m. that night as he prepared to leave for wrestling. The time of Jesse Sr.'s statement faced scrutiny from his teacher, Gloria Wilson, who attended the alcohol safety class with him for DWI violations. According to Wilson, the class did not conclude until at least 15 minutes to 8 p.m., making it logistically impossible for Jesse Sr. to observe Jesse Jr. There was also an alleged wrestling alibi. It was subsequently proven false. Pro wrestler Fred Ravel provided a detailed account of the events on the day of the murders, claiming that Jesse was with the wrestling crew that evening. However, one critical element in Fred's statement contradicted his claim. He mentioned writing a check for $300 to Charles Stone for a wrestling ring purchased on May 5, 1993, the day of the murders. Yet, the receipt shows a date of April 27th, over a week prior to the tragic events occurring, debunking Fred's assertion. Now, another pivotal aspect involves the Evan Williams whiskey bottle. Jesse asserted that he consumed Evan Williams whiskey on the evening of the murders, a detail crucial and substantiated his alleged involvement. Speaking to his attorney Dan Steidham, Jesse expressed anger at Damien and Jason's actions, particularly witnessing the mutilation of Christopher Byers. After leaving, he claimed to have vented his frustration
by smashing the Evan Williams whiskey bottle on an overpass between Walmart and Lakeshore. Now, during the Eccles-Baldwin hearing on February 22nd, 1994, prosecutor Brent Davis shared a statement. Quoting Mr. Stidham, he remarked, "If we can find a bottle like that," he says, "then that will convince me that it happened." Well, subsequently, at 9:30 or 10 in the evening, the group, which included Mr. Stidham, ventured beneath the West Memphis overpass, and to their surprise, they discovered a broken bottle at the location Jesse had indicated. The bottle was then taken to a local liquor store, where they spent a considerable amount of time matching it with specific items. To their astonishment, it aligned with the brand-name bottle Mr. Stidham had suggested they look for initially. However, Mr. Stidham found this evidence insufficient for conviction, and further efforts were undertaken but was a week-long hiatus with no apparent contact. Jesse maintained that Vicki Hutchinson had purchased the Evan Williams whiskey bottle for him on the day of the murders, a claim verified by Vicki herself. We have covered at length Miss Hutchinson's claims and her problematic involvement in this case, and she caused more damage than good for either side. If you want to, check the link below and it will be revealed to you. Throughout the proceedings, Jesse offered confessions, retractions, and subsequent confessions several times before and after his trial. Ultimately, he chose not to testify at Damien and Jason's trial. The intricate details surrounding the Evan Williams whiskey bottle underscored significance and the complex narrative of Jesse's involvement in the case. So what motivates Jesse's recantation? This phenomenon is not uncommon, particularly when individuals grapple with the ethical considerations, personal freedoms, and self-preservation. Even notorious criminals like Ted Bundy, who initially confessed to over 100 murders, later recanted, as did John Wayne Gacy. Murderers often act in their best interest, evident in their decisions to go to trial and, if convicted, pursue appeals. It's essential to note that Jesse's recantation doesn't necessarily imply innocence. Now let's delve into Jesse's low IQ score. The often cited IQ score of 72 is used to argue that Jesse may have been coerced into confessing. Now, Jesse's defense team administered an IQ test aiming to portray him as borderline mentally impaired. Notably, Dan Stidham openly discussed the test, acknowledging that a lower score could potentially be advantageous for his client by reducing the likelihood of a death penalty sentence. Part of this disclosure or discourse is captured in the documentary Paradise Lost. Now, consider Jesse's possible attempt to deliberately score poorly on his IQ test. It is not beyond reason, as highlighted in the Dr. Williams Wilkins cross-examination, that the doctor responsible for assessing Jesse, the IQ score, may not necessarily indicate borderline mental impairment, but rather reflect a lack of effort on Jesse's part. And who could blame the kid? Would you want to be perceived as borderline, learning disabled, challenged, unable to be coherent enough to even speak to your defense? Now, in Mara Lever's book, Devil's Knot, found on page 70, Jesse revealed that he had performed poorly in school and even dropped out due to lack of interest. He envisioned becoming a mechanic like his dad, relying more on street smarts than formal education, particularly excelling in understanding his Miranda rights. Ultimately, Jesse's guilt is unequivocal, supported by robust circumstantial evidence and the direct evidence of his confession. Alibis presented by Jesse, his father, and friends have been debunked, seemingly crafted to shield him. Jesse placed himself at the crime scene without a reliable alibi. Although initially not entirely truthful, he later provided pertinent details known only to those present. While we may not witness the entire puzzle, we have enough pieces to discern the picture. Jesse downplayed his involvement, leaving the extent of his participation uncertain. However, we do know he played a role in assaulting the boys, and he personally pursued Michael Moore. His confession and desire to take action only emerged after police interrogation and his conviction. While this incident is not directly linked to the murders, it does give us pause and a peek into Jesse's true capacity for caring for children or his potential to be able to harm them. I want you to listen. In March 1993, Jesse faced arrest for assaulting a young Tiffany Danielle Allen, a 13-year-old girl, by punching her in the face. Dennis Carter, a friend of Misskelley's, provided a statement to the West Memphis Police Department after the arrest, recounting an episode where Jesse chased down a 6-year-old girl, striking her head with a rock, and as the young girl cried, Jesse laughed. It's this individual, ladies and gentlemen, that the advocates for the West Memphis Three would like us to believe he's sweet and innocent and learning disabled and unable to commit such crimes and was deceived into making a confession. Until next time, I'm your host, Doug Duncan. When we return, we'll examine Damian Eccles. A reminder, as I leave you with this: once you enter the dark, you will never be the same.